The historian Tacitus tells us of a great persecution by the Emperor Nero, and that we believe it is during this persecution that Peter was martyred. Next. Somewhere around the year 64, much of Rome burned to the ground. We've all heard that story of Nero playing the violin while Rome burned. Okay, he was on top, allegedly, he was in his gardens on top of the Vatican Hill, watching Rome burn as he's playing his violin. What historians think now, however, was, oh, by the way, Nero was out of town at the time. They can prove that. He was actually not in town. So that whole thing about the Rome burn, fiddle while Rome burned, no. Some historians believe that it was actually Nero's agents who were trying to do a little bit of an urban renewal project that got slightly out of hand and burned most of the city on the other side of the Tiber River. This is on the other side of the Tiber River from the main city of Rome. This is the circus of Gaius and Nero. Nero needed a scapegoat. Who was he going to blame for this? So he turned to a group that was pretty, they weren't really out there yet, but it was a group that was starting to annoy him, the Christians. And he was looking for a small group that he could blame and say, there's the source of our problem. And he blamed the Christians. Tacitus reports that Nero had many of them, many Christians gathered together and killed. Tacitus reports one particular persecution which took place in a circus. He describes how many of the Christians were crucified and some of them set on fire to light the nighttime festivities. The Circus Maximus was heavily damaged during the fire and closed. Other circuses in and near the city were closed by the fire or too small for such a spectacle. Next slide, please. Click it once, please. Here we see the circus of Gaius and Nero. It is outside the city of Rome. Here's the Tiber River. The city of Rome would be over here. Here we see the circus of Gaius and Nero, a very large circus outside of the city of Rome. It was begun around the year 45 and completed around the year 55 AD. And it was just next to the Vatican Hill. Next. You see here the Vatican Hill sloping to the west and to the north. Okay. Next, we see here the Vatican Basilica today. This is the footprint of the Vatican Basilica. Here's the footprint of the Circus of Gaius and Nero. They actually found, when they were building the road that leads right up to St. Peter's Basilica, the Via Conciliazione, you've probably seen that very famous long shot of a street with light posts like this going down to St. Peter's Square. When they designed St. Peter's Basilica, it was meant so that you would walk through the city of Rome and all of a sudden, boom, come out into this magnificent piazza and be just struck by awe. It was in, I think it was for the World's, it was sometime later in the 20th century that they actually built that Via Conciliazione and kind of ruined the effect that the architects wanted. But they did, when they were building that, they found some of the stables of that circus, so they know that was there. So this circus was large enough, it was outside the city, and it is believed by archaeologists for a number of reasons that this was probably the circus. Go ahead to the next one. You can hit that. And this is the circus where you see, again, the Vatican Hill sloping to the north and to the west. And here is the Circus of Gaius and Nero. On the middle, click, you'll see the obelisk. On every major circus, the emperors would bring an obelisk. Some of them, they just made an obelisk and put it there. But the idea was to take an obelisk, which was really an Egyptian object, and they would take the obelisk from Egypt and bring it to Rome to show that they were emperor also of Egypt. Some of them didn't go to the trouble, they just had their own obelisk made and said, yeah, that's an Egyptian obelisk. This was an Egyptian obelisk at one time. So down the center of the, oh, back up. You're going too fast, sorry. There we go. Down the center, or the spina, the spine, you would find that obelisk. And again, in the background, you see the Vatican Hill. Okay, let's go ahead. All right. Again, while building the basilica area here. This is the Piazza Proto Martyri, the Piazza of the First Martyrs. It is called that because underneath this plaque right here, you will see a plaque demarking the place where the obelisk stood from the Circus of Gaius and Nero. They found the foundation of that obelisk underneath the pavement level here, and they marked it with that plaque. Again, this is the obelisk from the Circus of Gaius and Nero. Next slide, please. In 1586, Pope Sixtus V moved the obelisk to the center of St. Peter's Square. And that obelisk is in the same location today. Interesting story about this. You can see how they moved the obelisk. They brought it out laying flat. And then they had all of these horses and men pulling on ropes to get it to upright. It's a very delicate operation, a very, very delicate operation. And the Pope declared, the story has it, that no one was to speak except the main architect that was running this thing, so there would be no distractions, but anyone who would speak during this would be put to death because it was so dangerous they didn't want this thing to get ruined. The story has it that while they were pulling on these ropes, the internal friction of those ropes was so strong, so high, the friction was so high, that the ropes started to smoke. One of the men who was working there was a sailor. And he knew that when this happens, you just put water on the ropes. So he yelled out, "Water to the ropes." And they immediately threw water on the ropes, saved the ropes, thus saving the obelisk. It got upright. Afterwards, they took that man to the Pope, and they said, "He broke the rule, he spoke." And the Pope said, "Hey, you know." He said, "He saved the obelisk. What are you going to do?" So instead, the Pope said, "I'm not going to punish you, I want to reward you. What can I do for you?" He said, "Well, I come from this little town on the coast, and we have palm trees. And actually, olive trees, excuse me. In Rome, they don't use palm branches, they use olive branches. And he said, I would like St. Peter's Basilica to use the palm branches from our city for Palm Sunday." Is it true or not? Well, since 1586, they've been getting the palms from the same city, or the olive branches from the same city. So, okay. So this is the obelisk. Next slide, please. Here you see the obelisk in St. Peter's Square today. Click. That's the obelisk today. You can see where it is. Click again. And back there, through this archway here, is the Piazza Proto Martyri. Right? So if you remember that one picture that had the picture of the circus and next to it the footprint of the basilica. So the Proto Martyri is right through here, and they moved it to here. Okay. So we see that the Vatican Basilica is built on the Vatican Hill, right next to the Circus of Gaius and Nero, in which St. Peter was martyred. Next slide. In the year 320, the Emperor Constantine decided to build a great monument to the martyred Apostle Peter. Of all places in Rome, Constantine chose to build his basilica on the side of the Vatican Hill. Now, he could have built it on the top of the hill to the north. He could have built it on the bottom of the hill to the south, but instead he picked a place halfway up the hill. How inconvenient. Why would he choose a place halfway up the hill? He did that because there was a particular little monument that he wanted to be the centerpiece of his basilica. Next. Here you see the Vatican Hill sloping to the north. Okay. Click, please. Okay, next. I'm sorry, I missed a slide there. Go ahead. Next. There we go. That's the level of Constantine's basilica. Okay. Now, you can see that he took all the dirt from the Vatican Hill, the top of the hill. He took the dirt from here, and he moved it down here. 1 million cubic feet of earth was moved by hand in order to build this platform. So that the dirt wouldn't move, he built retaining walls. Next. Click. There we go. The 3 retaining walls. The foundation of this wall measures 2.68 meters wide at the top. And it is at least 35 feet above the original dirt. The closest one is over 2 meters wide at the top. Just under 2 meters wide at the top. And then they got bigger as they went down. So as you're going into the necropolis, you have to pass through these 3 walls. And there's a way to do that. You can do that today. You pass through these walls, but you see the walls that Constantine built as the foundation of his basilica. And again, he wanted it to be so that the basilica was at this level, the level upon which you will see a trophy, a little monument. Next, please. Why? Why are we using this monument? Okay. Why did Constantine want to focus on this? He wanted to build it around a monument to Peter in a very specific spot. He wanted to build it around what's called a tropeion. Okay? In Latin, it's an adricula. It's a small trophy is the word for it. It would stand about this high, and we'll see that it was in 3 sections. A trophy can refer to just a memorial built to somebody. You might see on the side of a road where somebody was tragically killed, they'll build a little, makeshift memorial. That would be a trophy. But it could also stand specifically for a burial place and a burial monument. Now, this trophy on the Vatican Hill was dedicated to Peter. In this letter, which is all Greek to me because it is in fact Greek, we see a letter from a Roman priest named Gaius, who was writing to a priest in Asia Minor whose name was Proclus. Proclus happened to be a heretic, and he was trying to defend his theological point of view by claiming his authority as the tomb of Saint Philip in the city where he lived. So I'm teaching, Proclus is saying, I'm teaching from apostolic authority because Philip is buried here. Gaius counters that argument and says, well, you may have the tomb of Philip, but we have the tropeion, the trophies, of Peter and Paul on the Vatican Hill and on the Ostian Way. The term tropeion, again, can be used either for a tomb or a simple memorial monument, but because Gaius is trying to counter an argument of a tomb, he would use the argument of a tomb as well. Not just saying, well, we just have some memorial monument. We actually have the tombs of Peter and Paul. So it's most likely using the authority of a tomb. That's important to archaeologists. Okay, that's important to say that he says, this is the tropeion Petros, the trophy of St. Peter, at the Vatican. All right, so he's talking about it being on the Vatican Hill. So we know that at some point, around the year 160, around the year 90, when Gaius was writing, he was referring to this trophy. Or 190, sorry. Next. Here's a picture of the trophy itself, okay? This, again, will stand about this high. And we're going to go, click, we'll see niche 1. This is a niche that was open to the air, and you can see a little hole through it. And there's a table right here. Was that table used as an altar? Pious tradition says yes, probably not. Niche 2 is right here, and down here, niche 1. Go ahead and click, there we go. Now, notice this opening between niche 2 and niche 1. Click. It is an asymmetrical opening, meaning that they're not just marking this spot, they're marking this spot. Okay? They're over a very particular spot that they're marking. Not here, they're marking it here. Again, archaeologists would say the only reason they're doing that is because that's where the grave was. Right? They're building the trophy. We'll see why they built it the way they built it, because it was an afterthought. It was an afterthought that they built the trophy. But once they built it, they realized they had to denote where the actual burial was. And it's asymmetrical. So we're going to see today, niche 3 doesn't exist. Niche 2 still exists. Niche 1 obviously exists, it's in the earth. But we're going to see that when you see St. Peter's Basilica, very often you're looking into niche 2. You're just not realizing that you're looking at a niche 2. Okay. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the trophy in Field P. Remember I mentioned Field P, the burial ground? All right. Here is the wall into which the trophy was built. That wall was painted red. Therefore, the archaeologists call it the Red Wall. Not very clever, these archaeologists. Yeah, as we go through, they're not real.